Welcome to my review of Canon's 24-105 f4L IS USM lens.
That feels good! Baby!
If I could only shoot on one lens for the rest of my life, it might well be this one. I developed into something of a bokeh whore with my second lens, the 50mm f1.8 Mark II, and also the help of Digital Rev TV, courtesy of Kai-Man Wong. So that 50mm, I got that right before I took a trip to Italy, and I used that 50mm for most of my trip in Italy, and really I started to really dislike it because it had too many limitations for everything that I was trying to shoot, and so I finally busted out the 18-55 that came with my Rebel XS, which I believe is also called the 1000D. Immediately when I got home, I started looking for a better zoom lens for general purpose and travel photography. I ended up with the 24-105 f4L IS USM for a couple of reasons. First off, the zoom range. It's one of the most versatile zoom ranges you can get because it goes just that little bit further past 70 and it still goes all the way down to 24. The image stabilization at 3.5 to 4 stops, it was crucial that I get that level of stabilization on any lens that I would get, because on my XS, I could really only use up to ISO 400. It only went to ISO 1600 to get acceptable image quality. So I needed great image stabilization. I really wanted a constant aperture. I really hated the variable aperture of the kit lens. I felt like that really ruined a lot of the pictures that I was trying to get, because I'd get everything right in terms of exposure for the 3.5, and then by the time I zoomed in and it was at 5.6, I couldn't recover that any longer. These reasons kind of culminate in a lens that will age really well, be incredibly versatile, and be very useful in the long term. When I recently went to Isla Mujeres and Cancun, I was able to get all of the images I wanted out of the 24-105 f4L and my 6D. And that's really been the case for the last 7 or so years of owning this lens. Let's get into the top line pros and cons. A 4x optical zoom that can actually perform, unlike the military's Viagra budget. It's got great build quality, and the weather sealing really works, despite being mostly plastic. It's got 4 stops or so of image stabilization for when you've had too much caffeine. The focus and zoom rings are well damped, but also easy to use. It's the single most useful and versatile zoom lens in Canon's EF lens lineup, unlike a convertible in the Arctic. It's got bad vignetting at 24mm. Really, though, the distortion at both the wide and tele ends is pretty bad. Although the barrel distortion at 24mm is gone by 35mm, it'll still be more noticeable than your girlfriend's DIY Pinterest gardening board. At 24mm as well, it's rather soft in the corners. The 24-105 is really best between about a 15mm window, between 35 and 50. The pin cushion distortion between 70 and 105mm is worse than a Malaysian textile worker's fingers. However, corrections both in camera and in Lightroom can fix that. For those landscapists among you, it does begin to diffract by f11. Finally, it can really only resolve between 30 and 40% of the detail within the focal plane. So that's really not enough, in my opinion, for, a lot of the higher resolution cameras that we're seeing nowadays. This lens, obviously, is 24 to 105mm on a full frame body. However, on an APS-C body, it's going to be about 38, 36 to 160. It's got 18 elements in 13 groups, a minimum focus distance of 1.5 feet, a maximum macro ratio of 1:4, and it has 1 super UD element and 3 aspherical elements.
That feels good!
In terms of build quality, while it is predominantly plastic and the focus and zoom rings are rubber, it is a good plastic. The buttons have retained their stickiness, so they're still a little bit heavy to push around, so you're not going to do it on accident over many, many years. It's got a metal lens mount, so it's going to be a little bit more durable, and it's also weather sealed. I've had this lens for a long time, and as a result, it's had its fair share of getting dropped. Specifically, this last 4th of July, our Independence Day here in the United States of America, it was raining buckets, and the monopod, this monopod that I had this on, fell slap into the mud, and it came away with no damage, and I was able to get all of the images that I wanted to after cleaning mud off of the front element. This was in many ways my first real lens. I decided that I wanted to go full frame, and so I started building my system around that, starting with this lens. But now it doesn't stand up optically. It's too slow to be preferable. I resent its limitations, and I resent those limitations because I can't in good conscience replace it with how versatile it is. What it comes down to is that this may be the only lens that you ever need, and it will certainly last as long as you need it to. In trying to get this shot, this monopod has fallen over twice with the camera on it and twice of its own accord just sitting here.